Meantime, the Washington Post reports today that a man who died while in ICE custody in Texas earlier this month was likely the victim of a homicide. Now, we should note that the company that runs the detention facility did not respond to the Post, and that the paper's reporting has not been confirmed by MS Now. I'm joined right now by Doug McMillon, the Washington Post reporter who got that exclusive. So, Doug, you reviewed an internal ICE document about the death of 55-year-old Geraldo Lunas Campos. As I read it, both sides agree there was a struggle, but then the stories wildly diverge. What did you find out, including the coroner's conclusion?
Yeah, this death was first reported by ICE 1 week ago, at which point they said really nothing about the cause of death. They said that the staff observed him in distress and said that an investigation was underway. My sources internally said that there was some indication of a use of force, so I followed that lead. I found out from a witness, an eyewitness, a fellow detainee at this detention center in Texas, who described a scene in which this man, Geraldo Lunas Campos, was being taken physically into the segregation unit of the detention center. He was insisting on having his medication. He was claiming that he didn't have his medication, and he didn't want to go into the segregation unit without his medication. And that this witness says that they were forcing him to kind of go into that cell. In that ensuing struggle, this witness said that at least 5 guards were essentially choking him and that they eventually choked him to death. Following that, I learned from the man's family that they'd been in touch with the medical examiner who's reviewing the body, who found evidence of a homicide, and that medical examiner told the family in a call that was recorded, and I have the recording, that this man, they believe that the manner of death was homicide, and the preliminary cause of death was asphyxia due to neck and chest compression.
Now, court records do show Mr. Campos had a criminal record, but what more do we know about him and about security? In other words, how folks with a record, because Tom Homan just said 70% of the people that we hold have a criminal record, how they are detained, and is it different from somebody who's picked up, for example, for coming into the country illegally but has no record?
Well, first of all, somebody with a criminal record certainly does not deserve to be killed. And they also, ICE detention, you can read on ICE's own website, says that ICE detention is not meant to be punitive. It's merely a place to hold people while their immigration cases are being adjudicated. What we've seen in Texas, and specifically this facility, which is on the Mexican border, in which the Trump administration created basically in the span of 6 months from what was an empty patch of desert on the Mexican border. It's a series of large white tents, and it's now the largest ICE detention center in the country. There are very, very frequent and very consistent reports over the last few months of very questionable substandard conditions there. ICE's own inspectors have gone to this facility and found the health conditions, overcrowding. People are not getting recreation time. People are not getting the medical treatment that's adequate for their health. So there are very strong concerns around this specific facility, and I mean the role it's playing kind of currently in the administration's crackdown on immigrants.
Yeah, I mean, in that regard, if he was indeed on medication and was simply asking for his medication, that fits with what you say about this particular facility and people not getting the medical help that they need. But the DHS, as I understand, told you there's an investigation happening. But I wonder, is this an isolated incident? What is the situation overall with ICE deaths in custody?
Well, they are accelerating. Last year, there were more than 30 ICE deaths in custody, which is the highest in at least 2 decades. And over the past 2 months, there's been an acceleration. There were just 4 and possibly 5 in the first 2 weeks of this year. So I think that there are growing numbers of people in these detention centers, but there are also growing number of deaths. And I think that you have to, at some point, start to look at what is causing these deaths, what is the reason for these deaths, and can they be avoided? In this situation, there's definitely going to be a lot of questions about, if this was a homicide, then there's definitely going to be very serious indication that could have been avoided, and there's going to be questions about the training, the oversight of the staff at this facility. But overall, looking at the ICE detention system, I think we really need to start asking the question of, if these deaths are increasing, if we're going to see, 2 a week, 3 a week, 1 a day at some point, potentially, maybe, is this going to be a crisis of people who are not able to get kind of adequate living conditions and medical treatment inside these centers?
Yeah, what really struck me about your great reporting and great writing was that he was reportedly, this victim, said to be disruptive, and he ended up dead. Thank you so much, Doug McMillon, for your great reporting. And people who want to read the full story can do so at WashingtonPost.com. Thank you.